So with another one of my favorite leagues, this time Serie A, about to start, I got uncomfortably close to my camera on my phone and said, F it, let's do another preview. So here we go. Here are my predictions for how I think it's going to go down in Italy for the 2018-2019 season, starting with Parma, who after being relegated to Serie D 4 seasons ago due to, let's say simply, bad finances, made history by being the first Italian club to be promoted in 3 successive seasons to finally find their way back to Serie A, which included beating Spezia 2-0 in the last game of the season in Serie B to make it happen. However, fun fact, apparently there were a few texts sent from Parma's top scorer Emanuele Calaio to some of his friends who were defenders on Spezia before that final game, where he asked them to take it easy so Parma could get promoted, and now there are allegations of match fixing, which has led to a possible 5-point deduction for Parma to start the season and a 2-year ban for Calaio, but apparently only the 2-year ban for the 36-year-old striker has held up, so I'm sure he's going to retire, or at least I would retire under similar circumstances. But still, there's just something swirling around Parma this season and it isn't positive, so I think they're going back down, 18th. And next up, it's AC Milan, who it seems have finally found some stability in their ownership group, even if that new ownership group is a hedge fund from the US, which seems kind of weird to be owned by a hedge fund. But whatever, they are now flush with cash, which was enough for the Tribunal Arbitration of Sport to overturn UEFA's decision to ban Milan from competing in the Europa League this upcoming season due to financial fair play violations. So all is pretty good on that front. And all is pretty good everywhere else too, because this hedge fund convinced club legend Paolo Maldini to come back and help be a part of restoring Milan's greatness, which finally you know, because how was he not involved before? And they got Leonardo to come back as well, which was very important because when Leo Bonucci left to go back to Juventus, Milan did some tidy business in that deal because in return, they got highly rated 24-year-old center back Mattia Caldara and convinced Gonzalo Higuain to join them on loan, which gives the club some viable options in the back and up top, since Patrick Cutrone, one of Milan's bright spots last season, looks to be ready for even more responsibility. So I guess the biggest of my many questions for this club is about their manager Gennaro Gattuso and if he's up for the job as he gets the most out of a pretty young but very promising team while balancing multiple competitions, which won't be easy, especially as they try and decide which competition matters most to them, which I assume is the league. But the teams that they'll be competing against to get in the top 4, and I'm talking Juventus, Inter Milan, Roma, and Napoli, all got stronger this offseason too, so I'm going to say 5th. And now let's talk a little Fiorentina, because I am absolutely loving their front 3 of Giovanni Simeone, Federico Chiesa, and Marco Piazza, who they just picked up from Juventus, and I think that's a very good signing. And they got Kevin Morales from Everton on loan. I just remembered that. So they've got talent, they've got depth, and they've got options, which has to put a smile on manager Stefano Pioli's face, especially when it comes to his favored 4-3-3 formation. Also, Pioli is known for developing young players, which makes him the perfect fit for Fiorentina, who are reportedly putting a big emphasis on younger players in an effort to cut costs. So with this in mind, and taking the talent that they already have on their team into consideration, I'm going to say 7th. And next up, it's Sampdoria, who are looking to take that next step this season after finishing with consecutive 10th place finishes over the last 2 years. But then they sold a few key pieces in the spine of their team as Lucas Torreira went to Arsenal, striker Duvan Zapata left to Adelante, and their starting goalkeeper Emiliano Viviano, which is a great name by the way, and I wish I had a name that cool, left for Sporting Clube de Portugal. So they have some holes that might be too big for them to fill at the moment, but the future looks bright. So keep an eye on Dennis Prat, the 24-year-old Belgian midfielder, and 20-year-old Ronaldo Vieira, who joins from Leeds, because I think both of these guys are poised to fill the void that Torreira left in the middle of midfield. So as for my prediction, after talking all about this, I'm going to say 10th again, because why not? And up next, it's Udinese, who are owned by the Pozzo family, which if you're paying attention, then you'll know that it's the same family that owns Watford, which pisses off most Udinese fans from what I understand, because they think the Pozzo family cares more about that team than theirs. And honestly, it kind of shows. After going through 3 managers last season, which saw them finish in 14th, they hired someone new this past offseason who legit has a terrible record of managing in Spain. So I would bet almost everything that I have that he won't last the full season, especially given the Pozzo family's track record with managers in general. But I think Udinese will still find a way to stay afloat, but barely. 16th. And now we got a club that I've been patiently waiting to talk about. It is Napoli, who did the unthinkable in some ways, because I'm sure he was wanted by many teams, and that is recruit the only man that has won 3 Champions League trophies with 3 different clubs, Carlo Ancelotti, to be their manager, which is a huge get after they lost Maurizio Sarri to Chelsea because they now have someone who can help them build upon last season's 91 points, but unfortunate second place finish. I mean, Juventus won the league the year before on 91 points. And this following season, it only got you second. The problem is, I think it just takes time for a new manager, no matter how good they are. Think Pep Guardiola at Manchester City in his first season, to implement new ideas and to get the players to buy in, especially coming off the great season that they had. So I think there's gonna be a slight drop off, despite the fact that Ancelotti got most of their big players to stay, convinced captain Mark Hamšík to not go to China and be a deep-lying playmaker, very similar to what Ancelotti did with Andrea Pirlo, which extended his career. And they signed Simone Verdi, who had 10 goals and 10 assists for Bologna last season, which I think he'll end up putting up better numbers this season when he's on the field with Lorenzo Insigne and Dries Mertens, among others, because how could he not put up better numbers with that kind of talent around him? However, despite all the positive things that I'm saying, I still think it's going to take them some time, so I'm going to say third. And now let's talk Frosinone, who despite getting past Palermo in the second leg of their Serie B playoff in sketchy fashion, because apparently the referee overturned his penalty call for Palermo because the Frosinone players talked him out of it, and the ball boys kept throwing balls on the field to slow down Palermo's attacks at the end of the game to make sure Frosinone won, which, now that I think about that some more, that's a pretty smart move, and I'm surprised that that doesn't happen more often. Well, despite the official appeals of Palermo, Frosinone got promoted, but I am predicting that they're gonna go straight back down because karma, 20th. Okay, now let's chat about Spal, who spent 15 out of 38 weeks last season in the relegation zone, but managed to survive and finish 17th, which for me comes down to their manager Leonardo Semplici, who since taking over in 2014, led them to promotion from Serie C to Serie B, and then used the same core of players to have them get promoted again to Serie A, and then he got them to stay up last season, so the guy knows what he's doing and how to get the most out of his team. And since they made some solid signings this summer, namely guys with a lot of Serie A experience, that means they should be even better than last year, so I'm gonna say 15th. And now let's talk about the team that puts the ass in Sassuolo. And I actually don't think that makes any sense whatsoever. Anyway, they're a club that seems to usually finish higher than it should while developing young players, and they sell these young players to bigger clubs, and then they find new young players to develop and rinse and repeat, except for last season when they finally settled into being bang average by finishing 11th, which oddly was 11 points behind 10th place, but only 8 points above 18th and the drop zone. And that's just crazy how that all worked out. But actually, I think something similar is going to happen this season since they lost their best attacking option, Matteo Politano, to Inter Milan, and their best defensive option, Francesco Acerbi, to Lazio. And this is despite me liking their new, young, attack-minded manager in Roberto De Zerbi. I think he has a really bright future, but still. 13th. And next up, it's Genoa, who welcomed back manager David Ballardini for his third time in charge of the club after they won only once in their first 12 games last season, and he helped them achieve mid-table success, finishing 12th. This season, though, with the full offseason under his belt, which saw 19 new players join the club, his intentions are very clear. He's going young with a mix of a few experienced guys in the spine of the team. And they're gonna see what happens, which I believe will be inconsistent but fun to watch. 12th. And now let's hee-haw our way to Chievo Verona because the Flying Donkeys got lucky as shit to stay up last season after they had a run from December to May of winning 2 out of 21 games before winning their last 3 and finishing in 13th. And this season, man, I think it could be more of the same, especially since they lost most of their experienced backline to expired contracts or retirement, and their top scorer Roberto Inglese to Napoli, so I'm gonna say 14th. And next up, it's Lazio, and the first thing that I wanna say is how sorry I am that you lost on the last day of the season to Inter Milan to see them leapfrog you for a Champions League spot so that you now have to play in the Europa League instead. That has to be heartbreaking. And the second thing I wanna say is how sorry I am to admit that you're still not gonna finish in the top 4 in my eyes despite having Ciro the scoring hero Immobile on your team and arguably one of the best young midfielders in the world in Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, because I don't think Immobile can match his 29 goals from the season before, nor will Luis Alberto, who had double digits in goals and assists last season as well, but Lazio will hang around, they'll be tough to play against, so I'll say they finish 6th. And now let's talk about Torino, also known as the little brother in Turin, since they always have to play second to big brother Juventus. And well, after boasting the 7th highest wage bill in Serie A last season, they fired their manager halfway through the season and hired Watford's Walter Mazzarri. And then to add to their woes, their top player Andrea Belotti only scored 10 goals, and yet they still finished 9th, which I would say is pretty respectable given the circumstances, but apparently Torino fans and club president Urbano Cairo want more. But I'm not sure how that's possible if they keep selling some of their best players away, like they did again this summer with Antonio Barreca and Camille Gleek both going to Monaco. So pick a side, Torino. If you're a selling club, that's cool, but then have realistic expectations. 11. Okay, all right, now let's talk about Empoli, who lit up Serie B last season by scoring 88 goals in 34 games. However, they also gave up 49 goals in those 34 games, which is not a good sign as they make the jump up, because if they're giving up that many goals to Serie B teams, imagine what one of the top clubs in Serie A is going to do to them. I don't think it's going to be very pretty. Also, they're definitely not going to be scoring as many goals as last season either, because the defenders in Serie A are better too. So, in summation, as much as I love a good underdog story and their signing of Antonino Lagumina from Palermo, who I believe at 22 is ready to make a big splash in the top division this season, Empoli is going to be going straight down, 19th. And oh yeah, you know who's coming next. Sing it with me. It's Roma, who have to have the deepest team in all of Italy. I mean, they have depth and quality in spades and in every position. However, with all due respect to Edin Dzeko, new signings Javier Pastore and Steven Nzonzi, and the huge potential of Cengiz Ünder and Justin Kluivert, they don't really have any true superstars, which apparently is the way that they like it, especially after they let big names like Raja Nainggolan go to Inter Milan and Alisson go to Liverpool. Not that they had any real choice on that one, because who turns down that massive transfer fee for a goalkeeper? No one. So it'll be interesting to see how manager Eusebio Di Francesco manages expectations, especially with their magical run to the Champions League semifinals last season, and how he manages not being able to sneak up on anyone anymore with his tactics, since I think everyone in Italy, and maybe all across Europe, will have a better understanding of how to beat them. But picking up Javier Pastore from PSG to play in the regista role is a big deal to him in his formation. So I'm torn, because I know a few people that work for the club, so I really want Roma to do well, but I think the season is going to be a little more difficult than the last one, but I still think they're going to qualify for the Champions League. I'm going to say 4th. And up next, it's Adelante, who have been overachieving for the last 2 seasons under manager Gianpiero Gasparini, who I have a great deal of respect for, mainly because he seems so fluid and flexible in his tactics, which allows his team to play multiple different styles in the same game based on the situation. I love all the managers that think in that way. So it's no surprise to me that they followed up an incredible 4th place finish 2 seasons ago with a very respectable 7th place finish last season. However, the top 6 teams in the league keep getting better and better because they're spending more and more. So I think Atalanta are going to have another slight drop off, even if one of my favorite players in Serie A, Papu Gomez, goes off again this season. 8th. And now it's time to go to the land of Bologna for Bologna. And that is a terrible joke, and I apologize. But I won't be apologizing for what I believe this club is capable of this season under new manager Pippo Inzaghi, who impressed many, myself included, with the job he did with Venezia over 2 seasons. But I can sense that he has a lot more to prove, especially after his one tumultuous season at AC Milan, and as he looks to prove that he's better than his brother, who's been doing great things as Lazio's manager. So I might be reaching here, but my gut is saying 9th, and I always trust my gut. And now it's time for the last team before I get to my 2 top choices. That's Cagliari. It's a tough one for me to pronounce, all right? I'm doing my best over here. I'm just a gringo. And it's going to be a tough one again for them this season after they had to win their last 2 matches of last season and get some help from other clubs to avoid being relegated. So despite my appreciation for their hire of Rolando Moran from Chievo, who has shown countless times as a manager about how he gets teams to avoid the drop, I haven't seen that drastic improvement from the club over the summer to really think they're going to do something special. But Moran's expertise is going to be vital as they figure out how to survive again this season, so I'm going to say 17th. And yes, let's do this. The last 2 teams, Juventus and Inter Milan, and just like I did for the Premier League preview, I'm doing these 2 teams together for this final hit because I don't want to spoil the surprise, and it actually might surprise you of who I'm going to choose for first. Anyway, on one hand, Juve made the biggest signing of the transfer window in the world, getting Cristiano Ronaldo to come to Italy, which I never thought was even a remote possibility for a number of reasons, but here he is, and he's going to make them better. But on the other hand, Inter might have had the best transfer window in all of Serie A by getting Nainggolan, De Vrij, Asamoah, Politano, Vikoko Pickles, Martinez, Keita Balde, and maybe even Luka Modric, if Modric gets his way. And if that happens, then my mind will officially be blown about the business Inter did this summer. However, back to this hand, Juventus is starting with a better team than Inter. So in my opinion, they're already well ahead of them and everyone else in the league, especially with Leo Bonucci coming back into the fold after his pretty forgettable 1 year at Milan. But hold on, this hand wants to say something. So what? They brought back a 31-year-old center back and signed an aging superstar, which means they clearly only want to win now. They don't care about building for the future, and they're not going for the league or the Coppa Italia again. They've been there. They've done that. So they're going for the Champions League and the Champions League only, which means they could get distracted in their quest for that trophy, which then means that Inter could finish in second. Because even if they're distracted, they're still good enough to hold you off unless you get Luka Modric, okay? Then maybe that's a different story. So there you have it. The hands and I have spoken. Juventus is going to get first again, but Inter is going to push them the whole way and finish second. And that alone, along with Ronaldo in Italy, should make this league incredibly fun to watch this season. So that is it. That is all I got. So let me know your thoughts. Hit subscribe if you're new here. Hit like if you're already subscribed. And I will see you tomorrow for my La Liga preview. Later.